Good morning, everybody. Today I'm taking you for another workshop, so let's go. So I managed to finally get here. I have about 6 minutes to spare and I can get in. I've been reading the email about it again. Canon R5C workshop. I hope I haven't signed up for one of these meetings when they are just trying to sell the camera to potential clients. Oh look, there we are. It's hard to hide one of us when we are trying to set up all those lights around. Yeah, it's difficult. Look. Can you see this light? This is how we fake natural lighting in the space, because you can see the light is on the other building. This is how we fake natural, beautiful lighting inside the area. Alright, to explain what's happening, I am at the moment at that place. I am embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed to this day when I'm trying to shoot something outside and I'm alone. When I'm with the crew, there's completely different story, but when I'm alone, I am simply embarrassed. So I've thought that how can I record? How can I be incognito? How can I do my thing, be honest, and as well at the same time bring you the experience of this workshop. Alright, so first part was about digital sensors, how they correlate, how is the image actually getting onto the SD card, what's the buffer, how is the sensor actually processing the image, what is the effective megapixels, what is... Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So to start right off the bat, you commonly maybe be familiar with 16mm and 35mm film. 16mm film is two perforations on the side, which is being fed by the machine into the system. Then you have the screen, frame, which has, by standard 16mm film, you are looking at 10.26 millimeters wide and a height of 7.49. Difference is that in the standard 16mm film, this space is reserved for analog soundtrack. It looks like grooves on a vinyl record. Has almost same principle, but you are capturing and reserving that space for that soundtrack. In regards to the 16mm film, that space is reserved for the soundtrack. Now, if I will take this space out and simply this entire space to be exposed to the lens, I might just simply create a film that's simply a bit wider, accommodating bigger space, getting much more area to capture my film on, and suddenly the width of the entire film is not 10.26, but 12.52. So you might think, why should I even consider then super 16mm film instead of basic 16? Well, you are getting more image, you are capturing much more of the space, and afterwards, when it will be remastered, you are getting bigger resolution, but you are not retaining the soundtrack directly onto the film, you have to have soundtrack on a separate film. When it comes to 35mm film, double perforated, because as you might remember, the 16 had only one side perforated, and the 35mm film now has 4 perforations per frame. Because the machines are getting bigger, the film is getting wider, and you want to have precisely fed film into the machine. The entire film, to be precise, right? This is a gauge, and it's 35mm. This entire thing is 35mm. A lot of these gauges were invented, and the machine had to be calibrated every time. The original 35mm film was specified as 1 3/8 of inches, and that was introduced by around 1890 by Dickson and Thomas Edison. 35mm film with 4 perforations per frame became standardized internationally at around 1909 and remained by far the dominant film gauge for image rotation and projection until digital photography and cinematography. So again, we have 4 perforations per frame. The width is 22mm of the frame, and the height is about 16. We still have, because this is a standard 35mm film, we still have soundtrack at the side of the film, which is being captured along with the film. Super 35mm film were invented, took the soundtrack out of the equation, and the frame increased in dimensions. 20, because this is not the 22, it's 21.95, and the height is 16. But by increasing the size and removing the soundtrack, width of 24.89, and height got also increased to about, because we're trying to occupy most of the space, got increased to 18.66. This is getting a bit ridiculous, but we are still using more and more space of that film. So to get super 35, we have 24, almost 25, so 24.89mm, and height 18.66. This is a standard super 35mm film. So I'll be continuing talking about 35mm film. I'll draw a wider thing because we need to be talking about aspect ratios. 3, 4. Now, the aspect ratio, because you have something going on in the frame. This entire frame is your working canvas. You have several aspect ratios when it comes to super 35mm film. 4:3. You have a 4, you have a 3 aspect ratio, which you have, but you are not taking the entire width of the frame. You might take a smaller part of it. If you're taking a smaller part of it, it's usually being done as taking the top framing of your film, not the bottom. Because most usually actors are gonna be maybe somewhere like here. If you're taking a top frame, you're most of getting, and it depends on the cinematographer, you're mostly getting the right part of the frame. 16:9, which is much wider part of your frame. And we are slowly getting to that widescreen aspect ratio. This is wider than before, but still, as you can see, entire frame. You are not capturing the entire width of the frame. The frame is still bigger, and that's why these aspect ratios are very versatile, because we can even shoot smaller, like 1.85 to 1. At first I heard about anamorphic lenses and I was wondering how they are so great. Why is everyone using anamorphic lenses? And I thought that they are just making everything cinematic, making those flares glow, etc. But anamorphic lenses are basically enabling you to squish more footage onto the smaller frame. And how this works, I'll show you on the basic Super 35 template with ratio, let's say 4:3 in the middle of it. Anamorphic lens is basically squishing sides of the footage onto the film. So you get the middle part completely not distorted as it was originally, but the sides are getting squished in. Anamorphic means relating to a distorted projection or drawing that appears normal when viewed from a particular point with a suitable mirror or lens. Our lens is that anamorphic lens, and this space is that squished part. Anamorphic doesn't mean that you are squishing just the sides, you can be also squishing the top, the bottom, or all around. It gets more difficult when you use all around distorted projection from that anamorphic lens. These two parts that are squished in, if they won't be squished, they would require much bigger space on that film, and that's not possible because that frame has just limited width. As you will be stretching those parts out, you will cover maybe around this big of an area, but because you don't have that big of a film or that wide capabilities, you are just using that anamorphic projection and stretching all that space into this tiny part. In this kind of a distortion, you might be wondering whether it is not dangerous using different anamorphic lens to project than to record. Yes, absolutely. You can have varieties of effects distorting these two areas, and in projection you might get all kinds of hallucinating effects if you won't use the same anamorphic lens you used for recording. Now to convert this everything into the digital sensor, you have your lens as well as before, which is focusing the light from the scene onto your digital sensor. Before it was focusing onto the film. The digital sensor is much more capable because it can shift and change the sensitivity towards light. Manufacturers are stating sensors in terms of megapixel counts, but sensors frankly don't have any megapixels, they have photosensors. And the megapixels are referring to resolution of your final picture. Megapixels because millions of pixels. Surely you have noticed that manufacturers are comparing real to effective sensor dimensions when it comes to their cameras. Sensors have photosensitive diodes or photosensors, not megapixels. Megapixels are, and we now know, referring to resolution of your final picture. Thanks to technical evolution, we are also capable of capturing color, not just brightness of the light. So why are we even talking about effective and real number of megapixels? Because the final image captured by the digital sensor has more trouble to come, and the sensor has to compensate for that. For example, it can clearly capture and know how to remove, for example, distortion. It can remove digital noise that comes with taking digital photos. It can also help with digital image stabilization and other technical advancements along the way. It's logical to assume that taking photos is different than taking video. It requires faster processing on the chip. So for example, Canon PowerShot V10 delivers, utilizing digital image stabilization, video at 13.1 megapixels and photos, which undergo different processes, at 15.2 megapixels. So it's a difference quite there. Take for example my camera. It states that it has 25.6 megapixels as a real count of them, but the effective number of megapixels is just 24.2. And that's why I can use, for example, digital image stabilization, or why is the denoising so effective, but you are getting less megapixels. At the beginning, I thought that it would be bad not having, I don't know, maybe 40 megapixels, but 24.2 is way too much if you are having good chip and the image is just outstanding. If you think about it, you're getting 24.2 megapixels. That's 24 million pixels. That's around 6,000 by 4,000 pixels in dimensions. And that's really big picture. If you know how to shoot, that's plenty enough. Ciao tutti! I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm currently in Italy. It's a vacation, so you will see me next in August. Sounds about good? I'm actually wondering, what are you doing here? Like, it's a summer. Go take a break. Take these things out. Like, nobody wants ya. I wanted to throw that thing, but it's too expensive for that. Enjoy summer while it's in here. I thank you. I hope you enjoyed the Teach Tuesday, and I'll see you in a month. Until that time, stay creative and yeah, have a good time. Bye-bye. Siri, turn off the lights.